A lawsuit against city schools sparked by our investigation is allowed to move forward. Fox 45 News talks to the civil rights attorney involved in the case on what this new development means. 2 Baltimore County students go through a terrifying walk to school. The first flashed by a stranger, the second assaulted. Fox 45 News echoes the safety concerns from one neighborhood. Another Squeegee incident leads to a foot chase that ended in a nearby basement. Fox 45 News examines the latest case in the Squeegee crisis plaguing Baltimore.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 4.
Well, I think everybody's watching this lawsuit around America, and hopefully we can have a precedent that will be set for other cities and other lawyers to be able to cite to as they fight for the children to get a quality education.
Good afternoon. In a city in crisis, major developments in the taxpayer lawsuit aiming to bring accountability to the Baltimore public school system. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. The lawsuit is moving forward after a judge denied the city's attempts to get it thrown out.
We have live team coverage this afternoon.
Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost starts us off live from city school headquarters. Mackenzie, you spoke with civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who is joining this lawsuit. What is he saying about the significance of this decision?
Yeah, Mary Kai, Ben Crump calls this move a landmark decision, and it's big because now the city will be forced to hand over information relating to what's been going on inside city schools. Now, remember that this lawsuit was filed by Giovanni and Shonda Patterson, and they allege that the city is misusing the billions of tax dollars to educate Baltimore City students. And a lot of the proof and the allegations are based on what Project Baltimore has been reporting and uncovering for years. We know that there have been failing students, failing grades, students graduating unprepared for the future, and most recently ghost students. And then there's that Office of Inspector General for Education report showing more than 12,000 failing grades were changed to passing. Now, Ben Crump says that this lawsuit, if successful, could really have national implications for schools across the country. Do you think that other lawsuits could spring up while this one is ongoing, or does this one need to play out before we could see it take hold in other cities?
Well, I think everybody's watching this lawsuit around America, and hopefully we can have a precedent that will be set for other cities and other lawyers to be able to cite to as they fight for the children to get a quality education, not just a subpar education. Now, we want them to have a quality education so they're not imprisoned in consequences and circumstances that leads them to being in the prison industrial complex. If you don't get a quality education, oftentimes you find yourself a victim of the school to prison pipeline.
Yeah, that was a big situation in Philadelphia, in fact, Mackenzie, at school to prison pipeline. So Crump says he believes America is watching this lawsuit. What's next in terms of the process?
Well, now it moves into the discovery phase, right? And I talked to another attorney who's involved, Scott Martyr, and he says that he plans to call anyone who may have any information for a deposition. And I asked him if that includes some top leaders. He says even the CEO of City Schools, Dr. Sonny Santelises, could be called for a deposition to learn more about what's been going on inside city schools and how that money is being used. Now, Ben Crump says that this case doesn't have to go to trial. He says that if the mayor and other city leaders are willing to come to the table and talk about ways to implement accountability and oversight, that this could be handled without moving to trial. But so far, that hasn't happened.
The city leaders, the city educators, the city businessmen, the city law enforcement agencies all come to the table and say, what can we do to alleviate this problem that has an effect on every aspect of the city? It all starts with education, and that's why we're fighting so hard to get this right.
If they aren't willing to admit the problem, do the leaders need to change?
If they won't admit there's a problem, I think we lay it out before the citizens in a trial, and the citizens hear all the evidence, and they return a verdict.
Now, you can hear more from that conversation with Crump, as well as what the city has to say about this latest development, coming up at 5 o'clock. Live at City Schools headquarters, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Project Baltimore's Chris Papst joins us now.
That's right, Chris, you've been investigating Baltimore City schools for almost 6 years, since 2017. And we understand much of what's been uncovered is at the center of this lawsuit.
Yeah, so as you guys know, we've been doing this now for, as you said, almost 6 years. And this has been a deep dive, long-term investigation of the public school systems in Maryland. And what we've learned investigating Baltimore City is that the problems there are district-wide. In many instances, they run generations deep. Now, at the heart of the lawsuit that was filed by Giovanni Patterson and his wife is whether Baltimore City Schools is failing to educate the students and in the process misusing billions of taxpayer dollars. Now, some of our findings do raise serious concerns. Last year, City Schools admitted to a massive scheme at Augusta Fells High School after we exposed how they were inflating enrollment numbers. The school was keeping students on the rolls even though they weren't attending. In some cases, we found students who hadn't been there for years. We even found one who was enrolled while he was in jail. You guys remember that?
He had a lot to say. He was really honest about his situation. Inflating enrollment, it would be done to increase funding, correct, for the schools?
Correct. So the schools are funded based on the number of students who are enrolled in that school. So padding the rolls with so-called ghost students would mean they would get more money per student. And right now, this year in Baltimore City Schools, that would be $21,000 per student enrolled. So that adds up to a lot of money. And this is bigger than just one school. So we also spoke with a former Baltimore principal who told us when she took over her school, and this was Claremont, it's in West Baltimore, there were students enrolled who hadn't been to class in years. She even told us there were students who were dead who were enrolled in her school. Now, some were enrolled in classes, the ones that were actually there, that weren't even offered. The classes weren't even offered, even though they were required to graduate.
Yeah, her story was really
it was
interesting
impactful, wasn't
too,
it?
and impactful.
Mary, indeed it was. And so, Chris, that brings us to our other question here, and that's students getting the education that they deserve, that they need, that their parents' tax dollars have paid for. That's where Project Baltimore's reporting on grade changing comes in, right?
Yeah, so this was back in 2017. Right. We had to sue Baltimore City Public Schools to get the results of grade-changing records that they were holding that they didn't want to get to the public. Now, in that instance, a judge ruled in our favor, saying that the school system willfully and knowingly, that was the judge's words, willfully and knowingly violated the law by not handing over those documents. And as a result, we received thousands of internal emails from Baltimore City Public Schools, which showed a culture of pushing students through the system, promoting them regardless of whether they completed their coursework. We found examples of teachers saying they were pressured to round up failing grades to passing. The Inspector General for Education earlier this year recently confirmed the grade changing was happening district-wide. He released a report that found more than 12,500 failing grades were changed to passing over 4 school years. That's 2016 to 2020. Those grade changes could have significantly impacted graduation rates in Baltimore City. According to the IG's report, upwards of 10% of students at some schools may have graduated when they certainly should not have.
And Chris, we always hear that city schools are underfunded. Kai and I lived through the whole fight for Thornton. Now we have Kerwin. The heart of the lawsuit is about taxpayer dollars. Why doesn't more money mean better outcomes? We're not seeing that.
We're not seeing that. And we know through the U.S. Census, because they take similar data from all the school systems, the 100 largest school systems, that Baltimore City is among the most funded large school systems in America. But yet, as Mary mentioned, national test scores rank us among the lowest in the country for student performance. We reported this week, Project Baltimore did, that there's a all-time national low in testing in Baltimore City schools compared to other large school systems around the country. But this is certainly not new. In 2017, Project Baltimore reported that there were 6 schools in Baltimore City that did not have a single student proficient in math or English. Another 13 high schools, 13 out of 39, had 0 students proficient in any state math testing. So if you think about it, 0 students, we've met adults who graduated, or not graduated, but went to the school system in the 1960s and 1990s without ever learning how to read or to find a job. And Kai Mary, we heard Attorney Crump say just a few minutes ago that the students who don't receive the education that they need, oftentimes, he said they end up in jail because they have to find a way to get money and they can't get a job.
And he really, really sees it as a civil rights issue.
He does.
And
Civil rights.
you understand when he talks about it. All right, Chris Papps, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And that does bring us to our question of the day. Are taxpayers getting their money's worth from Baltimore City schools? So far, 100% of you who voted say no, but we want to know what you think. Go to foxbaltimore.com/vote to make your voice heard.
Well, first on Fox and in Baltimore County, a warning from 2 schools in Lansdowne after 2 female students reported indecent exposure and assault on their way to school this week.
Fox 45's Amy Simpson is live in Lansdowne tonight. Amy, what are you learning?
Well, Mary Kai, principals from both Lansdowne Middle and Lansdowne High School say in both of these cases, the young girls were able to make it to the school buildings and report what happened to staff. This first incident allegedly happening Tuesday morning. According to a letter sent out to Lansdowne Middle School families, a female student reported being followed by a car on her way to school here before the driver of that black vehicle with dark tinted windows exposed himself to her. And just the next day, on Wednesday, another warning from the principal at Lansdowne High School, just down the street from us, where a female student reported being assaulted on a footbridge on her way to school that day. No details were given about the kind of assault that took place in that incident. But today, a mom here in the area reacting after learning about both of these incidents.
These kids should be able to go to school and feel safe and come home from school and feel safe. If they walk over there, take a partner. Always have a friend. Always. Never walk by yourself.
And Amy, what are you learning from police about their investigations into these cases?
Yeah, Kai, so tonight, Baltimore County Police tell me right now detectives are looking into whether these 2 incidents that happened twice, 2 consecutive days this week are connected or not. They say in the meantime, Baltimore County Police have increased its presence here in the Lansdowne area. They're also encouraging parents to discuss safety and vigilance on their way to and from school. We're live in Lansdowne. Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Well, Maryland is about to have a new comptroller for the first time in more than 15 years. Republican candidate Barry Glassman makes his pitch to voters in just a moment.
President Biden taking a darker tone in the final days leading up to the election. But is it helping Democrats? I'm Kayla Gaskins with that story from Washington.
What a spectacular fall afternoon it is, and the evening is looking great as well. But wait until I tell you about the weekend numbers. That's all coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
Fox 45 News, winner of 17 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.
We are 5 days away from Election Day, and Fox 45 News continues to take you beyond the podium.
State Comptroller Peter Franchot is leaving his position, and in tonight's candidate conversation, Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost talks with outgoing Harford County Executive Barry Glassman, the Republican candidate for State Comptroller.
County Executive Barry Glassman, thank you so much for doing this and talking about your campaign. First, why did you want to run for comptroller?
We've been so successful in Harford County with our budgeting, taking the county from a $4 million surplus to, when we close the books right now, it's about $35 million as comptroller, which is really set up to be a nonpartisan CFO bookkeeper for the state. They see me as a good fit for that also. I'm going to speak up for the taxpayer and make sure their dollars are spent wisely.
Now, the state has a pretty large surplus right now heading into the next fiscal year. How, in your mind, what's the most appropriate use of that money?
If we're not in a recession, we will be in a recession in the next quarter. So I think it's wise to set aside some of the funds for the rainy day fund and to save it. A portion of that revenue should be returned to the taxpayers.
I want to talk about education funding because Kerwin obviously is going to be taking place. Is there a role from your office to ensure that there is oversight and accountability with that money, millions and millions of dollars that are going out to these systems?
That estimate of the fiscal impact has to be reevaluated, number one. And I think the comptroller should have a role in really, when we get in there, to get a good ballpark figure on what the actual cost is going to be.
Do you think that there are any aspects of the Board of Public Works that needs reform, needs change in terms of how the contracts are debated, the details that are provided to the public, and how those meetings are run?
Yeah, I think transparency. There have been steps towards transparency. The board also has an opportunity to write different regulations. There have been some discussions over, particularly after the pandemic, about how much leeway we should give for emergency procurement, how much leeway departments should have to purchase and buy services without going to the Board of Public Works. And also I would go back to the digital. I do think getting those contracts out to everyone.
The emergency procurement, that process, I remember, did raise a lot of questions. What's your view on how, I guess, liberally that process was used?
Well, I think it was used appropriately.
Okay.
Listen, we had no playbook for the pandemic.
Early voting is underway. Election day is coming up really quick. What's your closing argument to taxpayers and to voters as they make their decision in the ballot box?
You go down that ballot, you really need to make, whether you're a Democrat, Independent, or Republican, you need to make that rational decision. You know, do I want one moderate check and balance in Annapolis, or do I want one party control? My race is really boiled down to that.
County Executive Barry Glassman, thanks so much for joining us.
Sure, good to be here.
And tomorrow, you can catch Mackenzie's conversation with Democratic candidate Brooke Learman, and you can see both of the candidates' full 30-minute conversations at foxbaltimore.com/vote2022.
The candidates are also joining Fox 45 Morning News for live conversations in the lead-up to Election Day. This morning, both candidates for Maryland's 3rd Congressional District, incumbent Democrat John Sarbanes and Republican Yuripsi Morgan, made their pitch to voters.
You just got to fight for people in Washington. Right now, that means fighting to kind of reduce costs, address the high cost of living. If you look at these big food conglomerates, the oil and gas industry, the pharmaceutical industry, they're running over people. They're price gouging. I see it as part of my job to push back on them on behalf of everyday Americans out there.
One of the first things that we have to do is realize that Congress has one of the most important roles, and that's the power of the purse. Congress has not passed a budget in so long that at this point it would be news if we actually did pass a budget, if we actually did know where our money was going, where our tax dollars were going, and how much overspending the government is doing.
Well, today is your last chance to vote early in Maryland. Those early voting centers will close at 8 o'clock tonight. Same-day registration is available on Tuesday. And be sure to check out the Fox 45 voter guide for all of our reporting on the upcoming general election. Point your phone's camera to the QR code or head to foxbaltimore.com/vote2022.
Weather Authority forecast in for Jonathan tonight, and taking a look at the beautiful fall colors right here in our own backyard. I don't know if you've noticed the last couple of days, but those trees have been popping. Very beautiful shot here from our Mile 1 Auto Group cam. And how about these temperatures? Upper 60s right now, a little northeast wind about 7 to 10 miles an hour. The fall colors and the leaf tracker. We've already passed the peak out there in Garrett and Allegheny counties, but definitely right near peak here in central Maryland, Eastern Shore. Still got a little ways to go, still some green on some of those trees out there. Temperatures in the yellow in terms of our color contours. 69 in Cockeysville right now, lower 70s for Rosedale out through Essex and Middle River, right about 66 in Dundalk. So weather story looks like this. A beautiful Thursday evening on tap for us. We will see warmer temperatures tomorrow and a big weekend warm up with numbers that are going to be well above average. Heading out for dinner tonight, we're talking about numbers that will drop into the 60s here through the next couple of hours. Overnight dropping into the lower 50s. You may wake up with some patchy fog tomorrow morning. Remember, this weekend is the time change weekend, so our sunrise and sunset times on Sunday will change dramatically. We fall back when we go to bed Saturday night because daylight saving time ends at 2 o'clock Sunday morning. So your evening forecast looks like this. Temperatures in the 50s, cool overnight. Again, possibly some patchy fog early tomorrow morning. Sun up there. Sun goes to bed tonight at 6:03, and you can see those temperatures in the upper 40s and lower 50s as you're waking up early tomorrow morning. Not much to get in your way. Again, a few clouds around on Friday. We're going to stay dry through most of the weekend. Saturday gets a little bit more cloudy, and we'll definitely see more of that southerly wind pickup, and that's when the warmer conditions will come in. May see a stray shower early Sunday morning. Here's that 7-day forecast for you. On Friday in the lower 70s, mid 70s. How about that? For Saturday and Sunday, first weekend of November, and even looking toward Election Day next week, we're talking about numbers in the mid 60s on Tuesday. Back to you.
Justin, thank you. Adnan Syed is a free man after spending decades in prison. Why the family of the girl he was accused of killing is demanding answers from prosecutors about why they vacated his conviction. But first, the Commanders could soon have a new owner. Why one billionaire's pitch could be historic for the NFL. Well, making headlines, the Ravens' top wide receiver, Rashad Bateman, is out for the rest of the season. That's because of a foot injury and surgery he is going to need to get. Bateman has been one of the NFL's most efficient wide receivers this season. Coach John Harbaugh says Devin Duvernay will return to his role as the Ravens' top wide receiver. And developing now, Bloomberg is reporting media owner Byron Allen is preparing a bid for the team. If that happens, he would be the first black owner in NFL history. John Gonzalez from our Sinclair sister station in Washington, D.C., reports on the possible sale and another potential scandal with the Commanders.
Well, the big question, of course, is will Dan Snyder sell this team? And if he does, the Washington Commanders could carry a price tag of close to $7 billion. That is nearly 9 times what Snyder paid back in '99 for the team and the stadium here 23 years ago. Now ESPN is also reporting that U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Virginia has opened a criminal investigation into allegations that the Washington Commanders engaged in financial improprieties. This news broke just hours after the D.C. area started to absorb the news that Snyder and his wife have hired Bank of America to help facilitate a potential sale. Here's local attorney Scott Bergman, who has represented NFL players. Listen to what he says could be an option.
It would be heartbreaking to see the team in the nation's capital, the DMV, being sold off. But is it a possibility? Absolutely. From a legal hat, it is very possible that Snyder's looking at relocating the team. He may not be trying to even sell the team, maybe just looking to get investment to relocate the team for himself.
Attorneys general in Virginia and D.C. also are reportedly investigating allegations of financial improprieties. By the way, this troubled franchise brings into FedEx Field on Sunday a 3-game winning streak.
Another Squeegee attack leads to a chase through a normally quiet neighborhood. How law enforcement were able to track down those suspects. Student performance in the city reaches a new low. One community leader's call for a new city school CEO as Project Baltimore questions what's being done to correct failures.
Project Baltimore is sponsored by the Snyder Law Group. Call 410 the Firm.
New tonight, another violent incident involving Squeegee kids. This time, the crime spilled into a quiet neighborhood in the middle of the afternoon, as tensions with the young men are at an all-time high.
That's right. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker joins us live in Baltimore to explain what happened. Maxine?
Well, Mary, police say this was another case where the Squeegee kids took the driver's cell phone and cash apped themselves a whole bunch of money before taking off, leading police on a chase that ultimately ended in 3 arrests.
Tensions between drivers and Squeegee kids continue to escalate. It was Tuesday afternoon at the intersection of MLK Boulevard and Washington Boulevard when police say a male driver reported 3 male Squeegee kids snatched his phone and cash apped a large sum of money to themselves. Police spotted the suspects, who ran and broke into a basement on Portland Street.
A lady came out saying that the suspects were hiding in her basement.
This man, who wanted to remain anonymous, says he heard the commotion coming from his neighbor's house.
I went outside to see what was going on, and I saw several police officers walking over a broken down fence and scaling a wall that connected some of the backyards of the houses in the area.
Officers did eventually catch up with the suspects and arrested 3 men, an 18-year-old, 20-year-old, and 22-year-old.
It's a little bit concerning to see it happening closer and closer to home, and it seems like the level of aggression has increased and, is kind of spilling over into residential neighborhoods, which is pretty uncomfortable.
In July, Timothy Reynolds was shot and killed by a Squeegee kid after he got out of his vehicle and approached the group of kids with a baseball bat. And just this past weekend, a Baltimore County couple say they were robbed by a Squeegee kid at East Fayette and President Street.
This should be a top priority for the mayor and the city council to sort of clean it up. And it took a shooting and a killing, and they still can't get it straight.
Mayor Brandon Scott is expected to unveil the plan from the Squeegee Collaborative to address the issue any day now. We asked his office Monday, when can people expect to see a change in policies? A spokesperson says the city will immediately begin implementing the Squeegee Collaborative's recommendations. Mayor Scott and the law department say squeegeeing is considered panhandling and therefore is protected free speech due to a U.S. Supreme Court ruling. But Baltimore's presumptive state's attorney, Ivan Bates, disagrees.
My job is to enforce the law. Stepping off that sidewalk, going in and out of traffic is illegal. And as far as I'm concerned, we cannot do that.
But until that happens, this neighbor is concerned there will only be more incidents like the one that disrupted his quiet neighborhood.
I don't think that it's something that's appropriate to continue to take place. I think that it's, and overall, something that should be outlawed and done away with.
Now, I actually just heard from the woman who the Squeegee kids broke into her basement. She just gave me a call right before air, and she said it was all absolutely terrifying. She was home at the time and saw the young men going into her basement and then police with guns in her backyard. Now, the mayor's office telling us today that we should expect those recommendations from the Squeegee Collaborative in the coming days. Reporting live in Baltimore, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Maxine, thank you. There are laws in place against squeegeeing, but they are not being enforced. One stating you cannot go into the road to solicit payment. The other bans people from blocking drivers, using obscene language and intimidation. The mayor says Squeegee kids are panhandling, as Maxine mentioned, which is protected by the First Amendment.
A new development in the Adnan Syed case. The attorney representing Hayman Lee's family is asking the state to lay out the evidence they say supported his release in September. Alexa Ashwell spoke with the family attorney and joins us now with what they're requesting. Alexa.
Okay, the family is seeking what's called an evidentiary hearing. This is part of their appeal that the victims' rights were violated during the process of Syed's release.
Show the evidence. That's the request from the family of Hayman Lee after Adnan Syed's conviction was vacated, making him a free man.
The family has a completely open mind. If Mr. Syed is not the person who killed Hay, the family wants to see the evidence that supports that he's not. And they want to know if there is a suspect out there they want to know about it.
Attorney Steve Kelly represents the Lee family. He filed this request to the Maryland Court of Appeals seeking a public hearing in which the state, Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby, would have to present the evidence her office says was newly discovered or not disclosed and ultimately led to Syed's release.
And there would have to be some, weighing of that evidence. So, for instance, the note that was just talked about.
This is that note. It was written by Kevin Urich, who was the prosecutor at the time Syed was on trial. It lists other names, and further down is the quote, "He told her that he would make her disappear, he would kill her." That section playing a role in Mosby's decision to throw out Syed's conviction. However, in Urich's transcription, the former prosecutor said he was not referring to another suspect.
There's a dispute about what the note means. The state's attorney believes that it means one thing. The author of the note, the former prosecutor, says it means something else. Well, that's classic evidentiary dispute, and that's decided by courts all the time.
Syed's legal team asking the court to dismiss the appeal, writing in part, "This appeal is moot because the appellant does not continue to suffer injury, assuming his rights were violated at all, and because there is no remedy this court can provide now that the state has dismissed the charges against Mr. Syed."
We've already modified.
Mosby's office also responding, saying the city state's attorney stands by their investigation. The Lee family looking for the court to decide.
They need to know justice was done. And if it's not been done, then they want to do everything they can to make sure it is done.
So the Court of Appeals will decide whether to grant the hearing. That decision not yet made. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Alexa, thank you. The Baltimore City Council has fast-tracked a bill that would allow council members to be eligible for a pension after 8 years of service rather than 12. That bill, which will have a final vote the day before Election Day, is contingent upon the passage of Question K. That ballot measure would establish a 2-term limit for the mayor, the council president, the comptroller, and city council members. The food depot in Northeast Baltimore has been shut down by the city's health department. According to reports, a rodent infestation and no potable water is the problem. Well, the food depot is at the shopping complex across from Clifton Park. The health department is asking the business to correct the violations before reinspection.
New federal test scores show Baltimore has hit an all-time low since testing began 13 years ago. As Project Baltimore's Chris Papps explains, a local civil rights activist now calling for City School CEO Dr. Sonia Santelises to be replaced.
It's been a neglected neighborhood. Some things that people take for granted we don't have here.
Sandtown, West Baltimore.
We don't have a food market. We don't have a bank. We don't have a laundromat. We don't even have early voting here.
For 72 years, Doc Cheatham has called this neighborhood home.
This road's named after you.
Yes, sir.
You're a pretty big deal around here.
Yeah.
He's the former president of the Baltimore chapter of the NAACP, a civil rights leader who's never lived anywhere else.
Nope.
Since 1950, Cheatham has watched Sandtown slowly turn from a thriving middle-class neighborhood into a poor and dangerous one. So far this year, as of November 1st, Baltimore's Western Police District has seen 31 homicides, 5 of them in Sandtown. In all of Baltimore County, there's been 24.
We're in an awful state. Conditions are awful here.
What about the schools?
Schools are awful. We need to do more and better for the children. Right now, they're suffering.
Cheatham believes much of the poverty and violence affecting his community can be tied back to education. The federal government, every couple years, releases the nation's report card, or NAEP. Students across the country are tested in 4th and 8th grade math and reading. When Baltimore City joined NAEP in 2009, our students scored 10 points below the large city average. By 2019, Baltimore fell to 18 points below the average. The 2022 results just released show more decline. Baltimore is now 21 points below the large city national average. With an average score of 218, Baltimore has hit an all-time low since beginning national testing 13 years ago.
Thank you for joining us for this very special moment today.
In July, Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott held a surprise press conference to celebrate City Schools CEO Dr. Sonia Santelises, completing her 6th year on the job.
And on behalf of the city, I want to salute you.
That press conference was just 4 months ago, as Baltimore City students drastically dropped in performance compared to other large cities.
Can I ask you a couple questions about the school system quickly?
Sure, come on, man.
We recently caught up with Mayor Scott, hoping to ask him about the NAEP scores and if he still supports Dr. Santelises.
In 2022 was the lowest scores Baltimore City has ever recorded.
Yeah, I'll just stop you right there and just say that, across the country, you saw declines after the pandemic. We understand that. There is learning loss across the board. And anyone who thinks that, anybody that thinks that it's just in Baltimore City should understand the deepness that this is a United States issue that we have to deal with.
But it does appear to be worse in Baltimore City.
Well, not in all
cases. The city is now the second lowest performing city in the country in math.
Not in all cases, Chris. I think what you like to do is paint a story. We know that you have an agenda that you're going to carry out, but I want you to report on all of the facts. Go back and look at the dives in some of the places. Look how in Baltimore compared to some of the other jurisdictions in Maryland that the declines weren't just as steep.
Overall, Maryland did see major setbacks in NAEP testing, but Baltimore City is the only jurisdiction that reports specific scores. We can't see how other districts performed.
Do you think Dr. Santelises needs to be replaced?
Yes, without a doubt. There's some of us who've been here a lifetime. I can't say I'm highly educated, but I know this city very well. It's insulting what they're doing to our children.
Cheatham has done what he can to help his hometown. After the death of Freddie Gray and the devastating riots that followed, he raised $250,000 to build this park in Sandtown.
Neighbors from the neighborhood, they come and pick the vegetables and I guess they eat them.
What was once a block of abandoned homes is now a place to eat, swing, play, and perform. It's a source of pride in the community, a place of peace among the murders on surrounding blocks.
That was my dream here, to build this park, and as you can see, it's 5 years old and it's doing good.
But this community needs more than just a few blocks of refuge. Cheatham says this neighborhood and others in Baltimore can no longer be neglected, and what's happening in the schools can no longer be accepted.
But we're not giving up, and I'm not giving up. I refuse to move from this neighborhood.
I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
A lawsuit against Baltimore City Schools is moving forward. The process of what happens next.
From hikes in food to energy prices, many are asking, when will it all end? Coming up, why experts believe the winter next year could be even more expensive.
Inflation frustration, heightened tensions overseas, and it could mean higher energy costs for you. Dee Gatton has a look at the impact on Americans.
High food prices, inflation, and rising energy costs. If you thought this winter was going to be bad, experts say brace yourself for what could be coming.
The problem is we don't see an end in sight.
Tim Maloney is a husband and father of two. He says with inflation and rising energy costs, he and his family have had to make some tough choices.
My wife was an occupational therapist that did home health, which means she drove to patients' houses. And we actually had to transition her into a remote job.
But he says even working from home, they couldn't escape higher energy costs.
It was too much to bear.
This winter, projections show heating bills could jump 28% if you use natural gas, 27% for heating oil, and 10% for electricity. As families like Maloney's try to cut back, it's next year experts are warning about.
The market is particularly concerned of what the winter of 2023 into 2024 might look like, and we could be faced with increasing energy prices.
Andrew Lippow of Lippow Oil Associates says the world is facing an energy crisis. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, he says there was a ban on the purchase of Russian oil and refined products and a scramble for alternative supplies.
Now that Europe is looking for alternative supplies, we're seeing increased demand on U.S. refined products. As a result, inventory has been declining. At the same time, our refineries are processing as much crude as they can into refined products.
Experts say with the shortage of energy and resulting price increases, wind and solar power generation could be an avenue to look at.
So the tree.
Maloney says he and his family have had to make adjustments.
Unfortunately, this might be kind of a more rough holiday season for us because there isn't as much wiggle room as you'd see before.
To help some people, the Biden administration just announced steps to help lower energy costs for families through rebate programs and home upgrades to hopefully decrease energy bills. Reporting for the National Desk, I'm Dee Gatton.
All right, thanks, Dee Dee. It's 4:48. I'm accustomed to always saying the time because that's what I do in the morning show. But either way, filling in the evening for tonight. Man, what a spectacular fall afternoon. I hope you had some time to enjoy being outdoors and think you're going to like tonight as well. This is a gorgeous shot over the Inner Harbor. What a beautiful city we live in here in Baltimore. Toyota Inner Harbor Skycam looking good. Check out some of our temperatures. Some of you are still in the lower 70s in Frederick and Westminster, 67 in Bel Air, 64 in Stevensville, 68 currently in Baltimore City. And if you look at the temperatures around the country, the East Coast much warmer than the West Coast. In fact, it's 57 degrees right now in Phoenix while we are in the upper 60s here, and we made it close to 70 for today. You can see all of that cold air, that winter-like storm affecting a lot of people on the West Coast. Beautiful Thursday evening on tap, warmer numbers on Friday, and then a big weekend warm-up, part of our weather story. So if you're heading out to dinner tonight, get some grub with the family. We're talking about numbers into the mid-60s, overall clear skies and cool conditions. Typically this time of year we drop to the 40s overnight, but that is not going to be the case. In fact, our upper 40s and lower 50s is what we will see for our overnight lows into your Friday morning. And as you wake up on Fox 45 Morning News tomorrow, we're talking about numbers in the lower 50s here for your Rise and Shine cast. Sun doesn't come up until 7:37, but remember those times are going to change, especially after we fall back this weekend. And we're on our way to a high of 73 for Friday afternoon, so temperatures even warmer than today. And speaking of that time change, the sunrise at 7:38, 6:02 the sunset, but check out those numbers on Sunday. That sun will be going to bed before 5 p.m. as daylight saving time ends. Here's a look at your temperature tracker, and this is also a really nice look for the first week of November. Those numbers well into the 70s into the weekend, well above average. We don't cool down until we get into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, right in time for Election Day. Also, not tracking any rain. We've got a future scan that stays mainly dry. We may pick up a few light showers early Sunday morning as a weak system comes through, but it'll be breezy on Saturday and definitely warmer. There's the next weather maker tracking in from the west. So again, that frontal boundary potentially could bring a few stray showers on Sunday. Here's that 7-day forecast for you. As I mentioned, tomorrow, the lower 70s. Those 70s continue through Monday with dry conditions. And then Tuesday, we're back to the mid-60s before we start cooling down toward the middle of next week. Back to you.
All right, Justin, looks like a winner. Thank you, sir. Coming up at 5 o'clock, a warning to Lansdowne parents. 2 students have been victims of assault by strangers on their way to school, according to police. The latest on the investigation.
Is the gig up for gig workers? I'm Angela Brown in Washington, D.C. Why some business experts are worried about a new rule that the White House considers a win for workers.
This morning, some business leaders are warning a new proposal from the Biden administration could be a blow to gig workers. Angela Brown of the National Desk has the story.
Around 59 million Americans make some of their income as independent contractors. A new rule change could make some of those gig workers employees. The gig could be up for millions of independent contractors.
We got an order right here.
The Labor Department proposing changes that could make it more difficult for companies to classify workers as independent contractors. Leah Polagashvili, George Mason University.
The hope there is that that companies and organizations would reclassify those workers into employees.
Employees who could qualify for benefits. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh tweeting out, misclassification hurts workers by denying them important benefits and basic rights, such as a minimum wage and overtime pay. But business experts believe the move could backfire, pointing to studies that employees are much more expensive than independent contractors, up to 30% more. Dan Ives, Wedbush Securities, telling CNBC the proposal is a gut punch for the gig economy.
Worst case, it could increase costs based on analysis 20 to 30%. So that would change the business models upside down.
And young workers could be caught in the crunch. TeamStage says 38% of gig workers are between the ages of 18 and 34 and struggling. The Lending Tree reporting 32% of millennials and Gen Zers moved back home with their parents during COVID and still live there. now facing a possible recession.
We've seen some companies already engaging in hiring freezes and a little bit of news on the layoffs. So it does not seem wise right now to also implement a rule that might cut off contracting opportunities as well.
But the bark could be worse than the bite. Uber telling the AP the proposed rule takes a measured approach, essentially returning us to the Obama era, during which our industry grew exponentially. And Lyft says the rule does not reclassify Lyft drivers as employees. The new rule would change a Trump-era policy that lowered the bar for classifying workers as independent contractors. Reporting in Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, accusations that the Baltimore City school system is misusing taxpayer dollars. The latest on the lawsuit over failing schools. Interest rates are up and inflation is high. A closer look at the Fed's plan to slow inflation.
A lawsuit pressing for accountability in Baltimore City schools moves forward. The legal battle surrounding two Baltimore residents who say the school system is misusing taxpayer funds.
Robbing a driver, then breaking into a basement to get away. The latest on what police say was a Squeegee kid incident as we continue to wait for a plan from the city.
Plus, the city council cutting the amount of time it takes for them to earn their own pensions. Why some in local government say the bill they're pushing is financially irresponsible.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 5.
This lawsuit is taking place in Baltimore City, but do you think that if successful, it could shape public policy across the country?
I absolutely think that this lawsuit can have an impact on education across America. Well, I think everybody's watching this lawsuit around America, and hopefully we can have a precedent that will be set for other cities and other lawyers to be able to cite to as they fight for the children to get a quality education. Hopefully with this lawsuit we can get it right, and that way it can help make not just Baltimore better, but it can help make cities across America better.
In a city in crisis, a lawsuit filed against Baltimore City and Baltimore City Public Schools is moving forward after a judge rules against the city. Good afternoon, I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. The lawsuit aims to bring accountability to a system facing some serious oversight problems. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost begins our team coverage on new developments in the legal battle. She joins us live from City School headquarters. Mackenzie, you spoke with civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who is joining this lawsuit. What does the judge's order mean?
Yeah, Mary, so this is being called a landmark decision as this case is allowed to move forward. Remember, it was first filed by Giovanni and Shonda Patterson, taxpayers in the city, who say that city leaders and city schools are misusing tax money when it comes to providing a quality education to students. Nationally known civil rights attorney Ben Crump says if successful, this lawsuit could be used as a roadmap to improve classrooms all across the country. In a win for parents and taxpayers of Baltimore City,
I think this is a landmark decision.
A judge allowing a lawsuit against the city of Baltimore and city schools to move forward. City leaders trying to get the case filed by Giovanni and Shonda Patterson dismissed, but the judge denying their attempt. And now civil rights attorney and activist Ben Crump, who is involved in the case, says the lawsuit could impact education nationwide if successful.
We just want children, whether they're black, white, brown, or red, to be able to have a chance at the American dream. And so often that starts with a quality education. I think everybody's watching this lawsuit around America.
The suit utilizing findings from Project Baltimore, uncovering and shining a light on students who are coming out of city schools unprepared for their next step. Plummeting test scores, graduation rates slipping, and Go students, inflated enrollment numbers, and a state inspector general for education investigation showing at least 12,000 failing grades in Baltimore City schools changed to passing. With education and violence inextricably linked, Crump says the gun violence isn't the only crisis facing Charm City.
I think everyone will admit there's a crisis in education.
Unlike previous unsuccessful lawsuits around the country arguing children have the constitutional right to a quality education, this suit alleges the city is misusing billions of tax dollars. This lawsuit is a taxpayer standing lawsuit. We know that. But is there also an element of civil rights issues at play?
We often talk about the civil rights aspects of a lot of young people, especially young people of color, not having a quality education in American society today. In many ways, it makes us regress from whatever progress we made.
With the lawsuit moving forward, attorney Scott Martyr says the veil of secrecy will be lifted on City Hall and City School headquarters.
That means that we are going to start taking depositions. Not just one or two depositions, potentially, yes, even the CEO. Anyone who has information that's relevant to the lawsuit is going to have to sit down, raise their right hand, and swear to tell the truth and answer questions.
Crump says Mayor Brandon Scott and City School CEO Sonia Santalisas, as well as others, could come to the table and find a solution. But so far, that is yet to happen.
We must remember all public servants are just that, servants to the public, and that they must adhere to the will of the people. And I think that verdict, if we have to go that far, will speak to the will of the people.
The problems have been highlighted for several years in Baltimore City, and the leaders really haven't paid attention. Why do you think they will now?
Well, I think a court order is a pretty persuasive tool to make people listen.
A trial date has not yet been scheduled. Now, in a statement, City School says that it remains committed to providing a quality education to all students, and they say they will let this legal matter play out in court. Live at City School's headquarters, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
And Project Baltimore's Chris Papps joins us now live in studio.
And Chris, we've learned that the lawsuit filed by a Baltimore City couple against City Schools moves forward. A judge denied the school system's motion to dismiss that case, a case largely based on your reporting.
Yeah, so Giovanni Patterson and his wife, they filed this claim, this lawsuit. They're Baltimore City residents, and they're claiming that Baltimore City Schools is simply failing to educate students and in the process misusing billions of taxpayer funds. And some of our findings listed in this suit do raise some serious questions about how City Schools is using your tax dollars. Now, last year, City Schools admitted to a massive scheme at Augusta Fell Savage High School after we exposed how they were inflating enrollment numbers. The school was keeping students on the rolls even though they weren't attending. In some cases, students hadn't been there in years. We even found one student who was enrolled while he was in jail.
Yeah, he had a compelling story for sure. So inflating enrollment, we've followed your reporting. It is all about increasing funding.
Yeah, so the way that the school systems work, the way the state works with money, is that they are funded on a per student basis. So the padding the rolls with these so-called ghost students means that more tax dollars are coming into the school system. And this year, Baltimore City Schools will get about $21,000 per student enrolled. So that adds up to a lot of money. And this is certainly bigger than just one school.
Now, Chris, the other issue here is whether those tax dollars are being used to give students the education they need, that they deserve. And that's where Project Baltimore's reporting on that grade-changing scandal came in.
Yeah, so that comes back to 2017 when we filed a public records lawsuit. City Schools denied it. So then we sued City Schools, took them to court, relating to documents concerning grade changing. And the judge in 2019 ruled in our favor, saying the school system knowingly and willfully broke the law, violated the law by not handing over those documents. And as a result, we received thousands of internal emails from Baltimore City Schools which showed a culture of pushing students through the system, promoting them, regardless of whether they completed the coursework. We found examples of teachers saying they were pressured to round up failing grades to passing. Then, earlier this year, in June, the Inspector General for Education further confirmed the grade changing was happening district-wide. He released a report that found more than 12,500 failing grades were changed to passing over a 4-year period, 2016 to 2020. And according to the IG, upwards of 10% of students at some schools may have graduated when they should not have.
And Chris, we constantly hear Baltimore City Schools are underfunded, and at the heart of this lawsuit is really taxpayer dollars. When will we get to a point where you just said $21,000 per student, where that more money will mean just incredible student performance? Will that ever happen?
Well, within the school system and within the city, we certainly hear that the school system is underfunded. Unfortunately for the people who say that, we have the U.S. Census, and the U.S. Census takes information from 100 largest school systems, like information, puts them together, and we can see exactly how much these school systems are funded. And Baltimore City Schools, for years, has been one of the most funded large school systems in America, yet, as Mary mentioned, national test scores rank us among the lowest in the country for student performance. And Project Baltimore did a story this week showing that the school system in national test scores are at a 13-year low when compared to other large cities and their school systems in the country.
All right, Chris, let's talk about another issue here, and that's learning loss in the pandemic. A lot of superintendents have talked about there was learning loss during the pandemic. Dr. Sonia Santelises, the CEO of the Baltimore City School System, talks about that. Put that aside for a second. What is your reporting uncovered about the school system struggling prior to the pandemic?
Okay, so we know that this is certainly not new, and we know that many of the metrics in the school system were going in the wrong direction before COVID, and now COVID really just exacerbated what was going on. You know, and over the years, Project Baltimore spoke with students who went to the school system in the 1960s and 1990s, and they never learned how to read back then. And how do you find a job? How do you support a family without basic math and reading skills? So it's fair to ask, are taxpayers getting their money's worth in the school system? And now it may be up to the courts to decide that, now that a judge has refused to dismiss the lawsuit against Baltimore City Schools and the city of Baltimore, who's also involved in this, which, remember, provides a significant amount of funding to the school system.
All right, we'll continue to watch where this lawsuit goes from here. Chris Papps, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to our question of the day. Are taxpayers getting their money's worth from the Baltimore City School System? So far, 100% of you who voted say no. But we want to know what you think. Go to foxbaltimore.com/vote to make your voice heard.
New tonight, another violent incident involving Squeegee kids. This time, the crime spilling into a quiet neighborhood in the middle of the afternoon as tensions with the young men are really at an all-time high for a lot of folks. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker joins us live in Baltimore to explain what happened in this incident. Maxine?
Well, Mary, police say this is another case where the Squeegee kids allegedly took the driver's phone and cash apped themselves a whole bunch of money before taking off and leading police on a chase. Now, it happened Tuesday afternoon at the intersection of MLK and Washington Boulevard. And when police spotted the suspects, they ran and broke into a woman's basement on Portland Street. Officers did eventually catch up with the suspects and arrested the 3 men. A neighbor heard all of the commotion.
It's a little bit concerning to see it happening closer and closer to home, and it seems like the level of aggression has increased and, is kind of spilling over into residential neighborhoods, which is pretty uncomfortable.
We actually spoke with a woman who's had her basement broken into just moments ago on the phone. She told me she was home at the time. The whole thing was terrifying. She saw them going into her basement and then saw police with guns drawn in her backyard. And of course, you'll remember in July was when Timothy Reynolds was shot and killed allegedly by a Squeegee kid after he got out of his vehicle and approached a group of them with a baseball bat. So this just another incident adding to a growing list.
And Maxine, when is Mayor Scott going to unveil the Squeegee collaborative plan? I know we sort of said earlier in the week it was going to be sometime this week, but it is Friday tomorrow, so he has basically one day to do it.
Well, it could be tomorrow. We're not quite sure. The mayor's office says in the coming days. Just basically we need to sit and wait and watch for that press release to come out. But coming days certainly should mean soon. We did ask his office Monday, when can people expect to see a change after these recommendations are issued? And they said they will immediately begin implementing the Squeegee Collaborative's recommendations. But until that happens, there are a lot of people concerned out there that change isn't coming fast enough. But of course, as soon as those recommendations are released, we'll be sure to bring them to you right here on air and online. Reporting live in Baltimore, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Thank you, Maxine. There are laws in the place right now against squeegeeing, but they're not being enforced. One states that you can't go into the roadway to solicit payment. The other bans people from blocking drivers, using obscene language, and intimidation. The mayor says squeegee kids are panhandling, which is therefore protected by the First Amendment.
Making headlines today, the City Council is fast-tracking a bill making members eligible for a pension after 8 years of service rather than 12. The bill is contingent on the passing of Question K, a ballot measure that would establish term limits for the mayor, City Council president, and City Council members. Some members of the city government are speaking out against the plan. Comptroller Bill Henry saying in part, "I don't understand why the City Council is rushing to pass this bill. It could be tweaked to accomplish the same goals in a far more fiscally responsible manner."
2 Baltimore County students report indecent exposure cases and assault on the way to school. What we know about the investigation as a warning goes out.
New numbers may be painting a clearer picture of what could happen on election night. I'm Scott Thuman in Washington. We go beyond the podium and take a closer look coming up.
And as we step into our Thursday evening, temperatures are looking great, and we've got an even warmer weekend around the corner. We're going to break it down for you in our Weather Authority forecast. Look at those colors.
We are following some breaking news from the Ravens Under Armour training facility in Owings Mills.
Wide receiver Rashad Bateman will undergo surgery for his foot injury, effectively ending this season. Fox 45's Rocco DeSangro explains how this will affect the team. Rocco?
It's such a tough loss for the team, Kai. Rashad Bateman, this team had such high expectations for him in year 2, but after he'll undergo Liz Frank surgery on his foot, he re-injured it on Thursday night, and that means his season will effectively come to an end.
You know, I think Rashad is a great guy. He really wants to be out there, wants to play, wants to have a career, wants to do well, and that's not going to change. You know, just there's different things happening in life. There's roadblocks sometimes, you know, and sometimes the best way is just to go through it, and that's what he's doing right now. He'll come back stronger than ever, and before the story's written, you know, he's going to have his day in the sun.
Bateman took to Instagram following the news that he would be undergoing the season-ending foot surgery, saying these are the darkest times, but he can't question God's plan. With the injury, it's unfortunate, but it should open up the door for Deshaun Jackson. He might be elevated from the practice squad for that Monday Night Football game against the Saints. We'll hear from him coming up in sports. For now, live in Owings Mills, Rocco DeSangro for Sports Unlimited.
Well, Republicans are hoping a dramatic shift in certain demographic groups will help them win Congress. Sinclair's chief political correspondent Scott Thuman goes beyond the podium, breaking down the latest data.
Will it be a red wave that sweeps over Congress, or do Democrats have time to turn the tides? Less than a week out, Republicans look primed for big gains on election night.
Why would any voter feel motivated to go vote for more of what we have right now? Are you better off that Democrats have been in control? Are you getting more money? Do your kids feel better in school?
Wall Street Journal polling shows a shift in Republicans' favor among Latino voters and women, particularly white suburban women, and has swung 26 percentage points away from Democrats since August, now favoring the GOP by 15 points.
Where they're contesting, absolutely focusing on inflation and focusing on the kinds of economic issues.
As for Democrats, they admit they missed the mark on messaging and are trying to make up ground late in the game.
Look at what has been accomplished in the first 2 years of the Biden presidency. New investments in manufacturing, new ways to lower health care costs, and we've got to get that message across.
And despite Democrats counting on issues like abortion rights to boost support from women, polls would indicate it's not the driving force they had hoped. Black men and women consistently supported Democratic candidates more than any other group of voters, helping win the party the Senate and White House as 9 in 10 black voters chose Biden over Trump. But almost nothing is a sure thing these days.
This is a competitive election, and we recognize that you cannot just assume that one particular group is going to loyally vote for one party.
And in just days will determine if Biden's avenue for accomplishments is still open or gets shut down. In Washington, I'm Scott Thuman.
All right, thank you for that, Scott. Our Weather Authority forecast in for Jonathan tonight, looking at a beautiful shot over the Inner Harbor and just a really gorgeous afternoon. Hopefully you had some time to enjoy that. You still have time, actually, for at least the next 30 or 40 minutes while the sun is up. Going to be a very nice evening for sure. 67 your temp right now, Cockeysville and Hunt Valley. We're at 65 in Towson, even hanging on to still 70 degrees at Essex and Middle River, 66 in Brooklyn Park. How about 73 in Glen Burnie right now? So a beautiful Thursday evening. We will see warmer numbers for your Friday. The first weekend of November is shaping up to be a nice one, a big weekend warm up. So as you're out to dinner over the next couple of hours, expect to see those temperatures hanging in the 60s and eventually cooling off. Probably don't even need that jacket as you make your way out this evening. On our leaf tracker, we're definitely seeing some of the near peak conditions across central Maryland. Eastern Shore, you're still seeing a little bit more of that green, but those colors are definitely changing. Now, in terms of our lows tonight, we're going to wake up in the upper 40s and lower 50s for tomorrow morning. So that's how low these temperatures will drop. Maybe the window open, but maybe just that extra blanket as you're in bed tonight. 52 here tomorrow in the 6 o'clock hours. You rise and shine with us, and we'll keep those temps in the 50s. Now, we start off with some cloud cover tomorrow. So pilots on your pilot cast, it's going to be a little IFR early. That's instrument flight rules, but more than likely a VFR day, visual flight rules similar to today. What a great afternoon to fly. This is the time change weekend, guys. Don't forget, you got to check your batteries and the smoke detectors and weather radios, and we fall back when we go to bed Saturday night. Officially, daylight saving time ends at 2 o'clock Sunday morning. So the Sunday morning sunrise will be at 6:39, and it goes to bed at 4:59. Some people not happy about that. They don't like it getting dark earlier, but either way, it's what it is, and that's what we have to deal with that time change. Just make sure to tell your friends, please, public service announcement, it's daylight saving time. There is no S. All right, here's that 7-day forecast. Tomorrow, lower 70s, mid-70s Saturday and Sunday. What a gorgeous weekend. We'll keep those 70s going even into Monday. And by Election Day next Tuesday, if you are getting out to vote, we'll see those numbers come down a little bit, but still mid-60s, and we stay dry. Back to you.
Thank you, Justin. Less than a week from Election Day, candidates are making a final push here in Maryland. Coming up, we'll hear from both candidates facing off in the state's 3rd congressional district.
New survey says, especially this time of year, money is our #1 stressor. I'm Liz Bonus. What we need to know about money and our mental health, it is just ahead.
Developing right now in Baltimore County, there's a warning from 2 schools in Lansdowne after 2 female students reported indecent exposure and assault by strangers on their way to school this week.
That's right. Fox 45's Amy Simpson live in Lansdowne tonight. Amy, tell us more about what happened.
Yeah, well, right now, Baltimore County Police say detectives are looking into whether the 2 incidents are connected. But in the meantime, additional officers have been assigned here to the Lansdowne area. Tonight, a stranger danger warning in southwest Baltimore County after 2 incidents this week involving female students from Lansdowne Middle and High Schools. According to a letter from Lansdowne Middle School's principal, a female student reported being followed by a car on her way to school Tuesday morning before the driver of the black vehicle with dark tinted windows exposed himself to her. And the following day, another warning from the principal at Lansdowne High School, just down the street, after a female student reported being assaulted on a footbridge on her way to school Wednesday. No details given about what kind of assault. But the principals say both students made it to school and reported what happened to staff. Police then called to investigate.
These kids should be able to go to school and feel safe and come home from school and feel safe.
Today, a mom who says she'll have a child at Lansdowne Middle next year, describing that footbridge and path.
We don't know who's back there.
Located behind a nearby CVS, saying it's a 20-minute shortcut in the area.
It's easier for them just to cut over instead of walking all the way down and around.
What appeared to be a young male student walking alone on that path around lunchtime today. Meanwhile, this mom with a familiar message that strength comes in numbers.
They walk over there, take a partner, always have a friend, always. Never walk by yourself.
And tonight, no additional suspect information is available, but police and principals from both the middle and high school are urging parents to discuss safety and vigilance with their students as they travel to and from school. Live in Lansdowne tonight, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
In a city in crisis, 2 deadly shootings happened overnight. Just after 11:30, police say a 32-year-old man was shot along East Preston Street. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Hours later, just after 4:30, a woman was shot along Bradford Street. She was taken to West 28th and Sisson Street, where police were called. She died at the hospital. Anyone with information about either shooting is asked to call police.
42-year-old Juan Foster of Baltimore is now facing an attempted homicide charge following a shooting near Tivoli Avenue back in May. Police say he shot a 31-year-old man. Foster was arrested in Hyattsville on October 26th.
Baltimore remains on pace to surpass 300 homicides for the 8th straight year. 283 people have been killed so far this year. Non-fatal shootings are up. Baltimore's seen 616 victims this year. We've also seen close to 2,500 robberies and 550 carjackings.
A report this week by the Baltimore City Inspector General shows a bill going unpaid nearly led to another city water crisis. The report found the Department of Finance neglected to pay for a chemical vital for the water purification process. DPW saying the Inspector General's report, it could have created an emergency health crisis for the city. Taxpayer advocate David Williams says the close call is a sign things need to be done differently.
There needs to be more safeguards in place, especially when you're talking about water safety, because DPW said, well, we never received these emails about the increased cost of this contract. Yet the vendor said, well, we sent multiple emails, and the Inspector General, if I remember correctly, said, yes, the emails were sent to DPW and to the agency, so there really need to be better safeguards. And
the billing issue has been resolved, and the Inspector General has made recommendations to avoid similar issues in the future.
Bus shelters are going up across Baltimore in an effort to keep riders protected from the elements as they wait for the bus. The MTA is expanding its dedicated bus lanes in 5 locations. MTA Administrator Holly Arnold joined Fox 45 Morning News to discuss the improvements.
We currently have 13 miles of dedicated bus lanes throughout the city, and they've been hugely impactful in improving travel speeds and reliability for our riders. And so we're testing out now. It's going to be a 6-month pilot, so it won't actually be painted red yet, but if it goes well, it will be. So it'll be signed and really focusing on getting customer feedback.
Bike racks will also be added to city buses, and veterans can ride for free. Well, the controversy surrounding Adnan Syed's release continues as Heyman Lee's family calls for another hearing over evidence used to free Syed. One major piece of evidence in question right now is a handwritten note that was central to Syed's case. Alexa Ashwell joins us live right now with the latest on this case. Alexa?
Well, Guy, the family is seeking what's called an evidentiary hearing. Their attorney explains. Take a listen.
The family has a completely open mind. If Mr. Syed is not the person who killed Hay, then we just, the family wants to see the evidence that supports that he's not. And they want to know if there is a suspect out there, they want to know about it.
So attorney Steve Kelly filed this request to the Maryland Court of Appeals, requesting Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby present the evidence her office says was newly discovered or not disclosed and ultimately led to Adnan Syed's release. One example, a note written by the prosecutor at the time Syed was on trial. It lists other names, and further down is the quote, "He told her that he would make her disappear, he would kill her." That section playing a role in Mosby's decision to throw out Syed's conviction. However, the former prosecutor said he was not referring to another suspect.
There's a dispute about what the note means. The state's attorney believes that it means one thing. The author of the note, the former prosecutor, says it means something else. Well, that's classic evidentiary dispute, and that's decided by courts all the time.
So Syed's legal team responding to the request for a hearing, asking the court dismiss the appeal. Mosby's office also responding, saying they stand by their investigation. The Court of Appeals will determine whether to grant a hearing. That decision not yet made. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Well, taking you beyond the podium, less than a week from Election Day, Republican challenger Yuripsi Morgan is trying to unseat Democratic U.S. Representative John Sarbanes in the battle for Maryland's 3rd congressional district. Sarbanes has represented the district since 2007. The top issues voters are weighing as they make their decision: abortion rights, crime concern, and of course the economy. This morning, both candidates made their pitch to voters on why they're the best choice for the state.
You just got to fight for people in Washington. Right now, that means fighting to kind of reduce costs, address the high cost of living. If you look at these big food conglomerates, the oil and gas industry, the pharmaceutical industry, they're running over people. They're price gouging. I see it as part of my job to push back on them on behalf of everyday Americans out there.
One of the first things that we have to do is realize that Congress has one of the most important roles, and that's the power of the purse. Congress has not passed a budget in so long that at this point it would be news if we actually did pass a budget, if we actually did know where our money was going, where our tax dollars were going, and how much overspending the government is doing.
Well, today is your final chance to vote early in the midterms. Polling places across Baltimore will be open until 8 tonight. If you plan on mailing in your ballot but you haven't gotten it yet, you can request one online, but that request has to be received by tomorrow night before midnight.
Be sure to check out the Fox 45 voter guide for all of our reporting on the upcoming general election. Scan the QR code and that will take you there, or head to foxbaltimore.com/vote2022. The Federal Reserve raised interest rates this week. Again, it is the 6th time this year as the federal government continues to try to get a handle on inflation.
The rate hikes making loans and mortgages more and more expensive for borrowers. Dr. Darius Arani, the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Applied Research at Towson University, joins us tonight. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
We've been seeing these rate hikes all year long, really. What do the continued rising interest rates mean right now for consumers in Maryland?
Well, it means the cost of financing any large ticket item will generally go up on a monthly basis. So everything from your purchasing appliances to cars to homes are all going to see a monthly increase, all things equal. This is also a particularly challenging time because many of those items are also have seen rapid price increases. So we're seeing kind of a confluence of two events: a rising cost of those goods, as well as a rising cost of financing those goods. So for consumers out there, if they can avoid buying any big ticket items for the time being, it'd probably be a good thing.
Yeah, Dr. Irani, cars may be something people put on the back burner with the cost of gas obviously going up. But let's talk about homes. And that's important, obviously, because it's one of the ways that families traditionally in America pass wealth down to the succeeding generations. What would your advice be to those who are interested in buying homes with interest rates going up? What types of strategies might they be able to use to buy a home for those who are interested in buying a home versus renting?
Well, so the real challenge is a bigger down payment will reduce your overall mortgage. Obviously, one thing you can do, many people did during the early 2000s, is, as they say, you marry the house, you date the mortgage rate. So, obviously you can refinance after a couple of 3 years when mortgage rates perhaps have settled down. But again, a larger down payment. Obviously, if the house is right for you and the price is right, I would certainly consider buying it, but then consider refinancing it in later years.
Absolutely. That isn't going to be needed if you're buying anytime soon. As we move into winter, we know prices are so high on everything, including gifts we're about to buy. What can people do to sort of ease that burden, avoid breaking their budgets?
Well, I certainly would recommend setting a budget now and perhaps starting the purchase of the gifts, now and sort of, spread it out over the next couple of months so that basically on December 23rd, you're not out scrambling to buy all the gifts for all your relatives and friends. But again, I'd also work within a budget and try to avoid financing any of those gifts because you'll be paying for them well into 2024 or 2025.
And that sounds painful.
It does. It does. Dr. Darius Irani, always a pleasure. Thank you. Always great advice. And we hope to talk to you before the holidays. Fair enough?
Thank you very much. Have a good rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Well, the Powerball, again without a winner, looking ahead to the next drawing and how Mary might potentially win it.
Early deals, credit cards, and potential shortages. I'm Atrell Nashar with how inflation will affect this holiday season.
Look, I've hit the Powerball number the last 3 drawings. So, hello, $4. Yeah, I got $4, and we didn't do the power play, but it's all good. Hey, power play tonight, though, is going to be the amazing weather and the weekend that's going to be warmer than average. We're going to talk about just how high those numbers go coming up in a few.
Making headlines right now, most Americans still support sending financial aid to Ukraine to help fight off Russian forces, but support is waning. A new Wall Street Journal survey finds 30% of Americans think the administration is doing too much. In March, only 6% felt that way. 48% of GOP respondents now say the U.S. is overspending to support Ukraine. 81% of Democrats believe the country needs to continue to support Ukraine. Former President Donald Trump files a lawsuit in Florida to stop New York's Attorney General from getting records. The New York Attorney General wants documents from the trust that owns the Trump organization. But according to Trump, the Florida Constitution protects his privacy rights. Trump's legal team filed the civil suit just hours after a New York judge denied his request to move the AG's $250 million lawsuit against him into another division of New York's state court. Despite the pinch of inflation, the holiday season, consumers are expected to spend more than $942 billion. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar has a closer look at what it will look like.
The headwinds of inflation aren't keeping American consumers from making their holiday shopping lists. The National Retail Federation predicts sales will grow between 6 and 8% from last year. See you again soon. But rising prices and supply chain issues are changing the retail landscape. Each year, holiday merchandise seems to arrive in stores earlier and earlier. This year, you can partly blame that on inflation. Walmart, Target, among those that started holiday promotions in early October. While data show inflation has consumers eager to snag early deals, the CEO of Overstock explains another reason for the flood of early discounts.
There's been excess inventory in the market. Everyone is being aggressive.
But some shoppers are still paying off what they bought last year. About 42 million Americans who used credit cards to buy gifts last year still haven't paid off their balance, according to NerdWallet. They say this happens every year, but it's especially risky now.
We're also in an environment right now with rising interest rates, so that credit card debt is just getting more expensive.
NerdWallet finds about 3/4 of holiday shoppers plan to use credit cards to buy gifts this year, on average charging $663.
With higher prices, it means that it's a lot harder for people to rely only on their savings. And so the next place to turn is credit cards.
There are fewer options, though, for avoiding rising costs of other holiday staples like turkeys and Christmas trees, as farmers are up against an avian flu, high operating costs, and an overall imbalance of supply and demand. This Christmas tree farmer in North Carolina says when he starts selling later this month, he expects his trees to sell out in 10 days.
We're having to kind of ration and prorate our inventory.
Farmers, shoppers, retailers, all planning ahead to make the holidays feel normal during an economic moment that's anything but. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
This just in, it's just in today for Jonathan Myers. We love having you here, brother.
Hey, I like being here.
Good to see you.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see you guys because we see you on TV, but never like in person. So.
I know. Your family's well? Everybody's well?
Absolutely, yeah. Yours too?
Everybody's doing well.
We need a station barbecue.
Let's do it.
Get us all back together.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
That's right. Fire up the grill and we're good to go. I don't care what time of year.
I mean, and look at this, Kai. I mean, these are like October, maybe September.
Yes, sir.
It's November 3rd, everybody. And what a beautiful shot from our Toyota Inner Harbor Sky Cam. That sun is setting over Charm City. And what a gorgeous day it was. This weekend is going to be fantastic. Fells Fest is taking place. Chili Cook-Off is going on Saturday at Camden Yards. And yes, I will be one of the judges. So I hope to see you out there. Should be a lot of fun. We hit 69 degrees today, second day in a row in the upper 60s. The average is 62. So keeping that well above trend going. And overnight lows are not too bad. Typically, we're at about 40 degrees. It was chilly this morning, but we actually woke up in the upper 40s earlier today. So these are your current temperatures. A lot of us are still hanging out in the mid to upper 60s for Westminster and Cockeysville over to Bel Air. 64 in Annapolis right now. The temperatures on this side of the country a lot warmer than the west. In fact, right now, we're actually warmer than Phoenix, Arizona in the 50s. And look at all that blue, that cold air, that winter-like system that is going to bring snow to the Rockies and has already brought snow to parts of the Sierra Nevada mountains. A beautiful Thursday evening on tap for us. We do have actually warmer numbers for your Friday and then a big weekend warm up as we get into your Saturday and Sunday. Check out the next 12 hours. Those numbers will slide down just a little bit, but overall a very pleasant evening, upper 50s through 9 p.m. and we'll bottom out there in the lower 50s for tomorrow morning. So basically 50s for us tonight, a little patchy fog possible tomorrow morning as you get up and about. And you can see those numbers when you wake up here on Fox 45 Morning News. Hope you're watching. Upper 40s and lower 50s here. And we're going to top out at 73 tomorrow, so that's a real nice day. Temperature staying well above average. Up and down the 95 corridor, you're going to see those temperatures in the lower 70s for Philly and Baltimore, down through D.C., Richmond at 74. Now, we fall back this weekend. Don't forget about that. The time change happens. The sunrise today was at 7:38, 6:02 here in just a little bit. But look at a Sunday sunrise and sunset time, 6:39 and going to bed at 4:59. So obviously those daylight hours are shrinking as we get into standard time. Remember, no S in savings, please. It's daylight saving time. And look at that. As we take you on your 7-day forecast, low to mid 70s into the weekend. Even next week on Monday, we come back a little bit into the mid 60s for Election Day, Tuesday. Back to you.
Thank you, Justin. Well, no one drew the winning ticket, and that means the Powerball jackpot gets higher. It's up to an estimated $1.5 billion for Saturday's drawing. Now, the one-time cash payout for a winning ticket will come to about $746 million. You'll have to get very lucky, though. There have been 39 consecutive drawings with no winner. Well, new tonight at 6 o'clock, breaking news regarding Baltimore's squeegee enforcement. Now, the mayor's office is changing its strategy.
Huge loss for the Ravens. Rashad Bateman set to undergo season-ending foot surgery. Lamar Jackson's reaction to the news.
I mean, I'm just finding out about this. Like, that's my guy. You know, we was looking forward to having a great long season, but, you know, guy had other plans, but I wish him a speedy recovery. And, you know, we got a lot of great guys, you know, in our receiving group. And I got full 100% confidence in those guys going to make things happen for us this season. So we're just waiting on Bate to get back, but we good.
All right, Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson talking about Rashad Bateman being out for the season with foot surgery coming up, season-ending surgery. Meantime, coming up on Fox 45 News at 6 o'clock, breaking news regarding the Squeegee Collaborative. The mayor's office provides initial details on what will be included in the plan. And the NFL's Washington Commanders up for sale as the team is under investigation by the feds. What federal agents are searching for and why a sale could mean a new stadium.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 6.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Bubala. We're going to get right to the breaking news. Fox 45 is learning a plan to tackle Baltimore's squeegee crisis will be announced after the election. We have learned, though, some of the details of the plan. The mayor's office tells us squeegee kids will come up with their own code of conduct, and there will be designated areas of enforcement. The mayor's office also confirming guaranteed income will be part of the plan, although it's unclear how much money will be offered. Keith Daniels is following the story, and we'll have much more later tonight. And this comes as tensions between residents and squeegee kids remains high. Fox 45 News is learning of another incident in which police say squeegee kids took a driver's phone and wired themselves a large amount of money before leading police on a chase that ended in 3 arrests. It happened at the intersection of MLK and Washington Boulevards. Police say the suspects broke into a woman's basement. A neighbor says he heard the commotion down the block.
It's a little bit concerning to see it happening closer and closer to home, and it seems like the level of aggression has increased and, you know, is kind of spilling over into residential neighborhoods, which is pretty uncomfortable.
Again, Keith Daniels will have more on the mayor's office's squeegee plan tonight. A formal announcement is expected sometime next week after the election on Tuesday.
Well, I think everybody's watching this lawsuit around America, and hopefully we can have a precedent that will be set for other cities and other lawyers to be able to cite to as they fight for the children to get a quality education.
A lawsuit aimed at holding Baltimore City schools accountable for problems facing students moves forward after a judge rules against the city. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost went one-on-one with civil rights attorney Ben Crump and has the new developments.
This is being called a landmark decision as this case is allowed to move forward. It was filed by Giovanni and Shonda Patterson, taxpayers in Baltimore City, who claim that the city is misusing their money when it comes to providing a quality education for students. Nationally known civil rights attorney Ben Crump says that if successful, this lawsuit could be used as a roadmap to improve classrooms all across the country. In a win for parents and taxpayers of Baltimore City,
I think this is a landmark decision.
A judge allowing a lawsuit against the city of Baltimore and city schools to move forward. City leaders trying to get the case filed by Giovanni and Shonda Patterson dismissed, but the judge denying their attempt. And now civil rights attorney and activist Ben Crump, who is involved in the case, says the lawsuit could impact education nationwide if successful.
We just want children, whether they're black, white, brown, or red, to be able to have a chance at the American dream. And so often that starts with a quality education. I think everybody's watching this lawsuit around America.
The suit utilizing findings from Project Baltimore, uncovering and shining a light on students who are coming out of city schools unprepared for their next step. Plummeting test scores, graduation rates slipping, and ghost students, inflated enrollment numbers, and a state inspector general for education investigation showing at least 12,000 failing grades in Baltimore City schools changed to passing. With education and violence inextricably linked, Crump says that gun violence isn't the only crisis facing Charm City.
I think everyone will admit there's a crisis in education.
Unlike previous unsuccessful lawsuits around the country arguing children have the constitutional right to a quality education, this suit alleges the city is misusing billions of tax dollars.
This lawsuit is a taxpayer standing lawsuit. We know that. But is there also an element of civil rights issues at play?
We often talk about the civil rights aspects of a lot of young people, especially young people of color, not having a quality education in American society today. In many ways, it makes us regress from whatever progress we made.
With the lawsuit moving forward, attorney Scott Martyr says the veil of secrecy will be lifted on City Hall and city school headquarters.
That means that we're going to start taking depositions. Not just one or two depositions, potentially, yes, even the CEO. Anyone who has information that's relevant to the lawsuit is going to have to sit down, raise their right hand, and swear to tell the truth and answer questions.
Crump says Mayor Brandon Scott and City School CEO Sonia Santalisas, as well as others, could come to the table and find a solution. But so far, that is yet to happen.
We must remember all public servants are just that, servants to the public, and that they must adhere to the will of the people. And I think that verdict, if we have to go that far, will speak to the will of the people.
The problems have been highlighted for several years in Baltimore City, and the leaders really haven't paid attention. Why do you think they will now?
Well, I think a court order is a pretty persuasive tool to make people listen.
A trial date has not yet been scheduled. In a statement, City School says that it remains committed to providing a quality education for students, and they say they will let this legal matter play out in court. At City Schools headquarters, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Our Project Baltimore team has also done extensive reporting on the issues in city schools. To see their complete coverage, click on Project Baltimore tab at foxbaltimore.com. Well, a pair of deadly shootings overnight in Baltimore City. Just after 11:30 p.m., police say a 32-year-old man was shot along East Preston Street. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Hours later, just after 4:30, a woman was shot along Bradford Street. She was then driven to West 28th and Sisson Street, where police were called. She died at the hospital. Anyone with information on either shooting is asked to call police. 4 Howard County teens have been charged in the thefts of more than a dozen cars over a 6-month period. Police say the thefts span from February to July of this year in Elkridge, Hanover, and Laurel. Many of the stolen cars were found in Laurel. A warning tonight from 2 schools in Lansdowne after a pair of female students reported indecent exposure by strangers on their way to school. Detectives are looking into whether the incidents are connected. According to a letter from the principal of Lansdowne Middle School, one student says she was followed by a black car with tinted windows on Tuesday. 1 day later, a second student says she was assaulted on a walking bridge. One mother says that bridge can be a risky area.
We don't know who's back there. It's easier for them just to cut over instead of walking all the way down and around. They walk over there. Take a partner. Always have a friend. Always. Never walk by yourself.
Police say they have no additional information on any suspects. School leaders are urging students to be vigilant when walking to and from school.
New tonight, 4 Baltimore City Council members are fast-tracking a measure that would reduce pension requirements from 12 years to 8 years. Now, that move is contingent upon Question K passing, which would establish 8-year term limits for City Council members, Comptroller, and also the mayor. Councilman Zeke Cohen opposes that measure moving forward, saying it's rushed and completely ignores any recommendation from the Finance Department. Now, he did say he supports robust pensions for city employees. Comptroller Bill Henry adds the rush isn't necessary, saying the city really has 10 years to figure out a new pension system, and waiting would be a more fiscally responsible move. Mary?
Kai, thank you. Time is running out if you are looking to vote early. Polling places close tonight at 8, so you have less than 2 hours left. Otherwise, you'll have to wait until Election Day to cast your ballot. As of 4:30 this afternoon, the Maryland Department of Elections says nearly 48,000 Marylanders voted today. Be sure to check out the Fox 45 voter guide for all of our reporting on the upcoming general election. Point your phone's camera at the QR code to take you straight there, or head to foxbaltimore.com/vote2022. Well, the attorney for Haymon Lee's family is asking the state to lay out evidence they say supported his release in September. Alexa Ashwell spoke to the family attorney, has more on this request.
The family is seeking what's called an evidentiary hearing. This is part of their appeal that their victims' rights were violated during the process of Syed's release. Show the evidence. That's the request from the family of Haymon Lee after Adnan Syed's conviction was vacated, making him a free man.
The family has a completely open mind. If Mr. Syed is not the person who killed Hay, the family wants to see the evidence that supports that he's not. And they want to know if there is a suspect out there. They want to know about it.
Attorney Steve Kelly represents the Lee family. He filed this request to the Maryland Court of Appeals, seeking a public hearing in which the state, Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby, would have to present the evidence her office says was newly discovered or not disclosed and ultimately led to Syed's release.
And there would have to be some, weighing of that evidence. So, for instance, the note that was talked about.
This is that note. It was written by Kevin Urich, who was the prosecutor at the time Syed was on trial. It lists other names, and further down is the quote, "He told her that he would make her disappear, he would kill her." That section playing a role in Mosby's decision to throw out Syed's conviction. However, in Urich's transcription, the former prosecutor said he was not referring to another suspect.
There's a dispute about what the note means. The state's attorney believes that it means one thing. The author of the note, the former prosecutor, says it means something else. Well, that's classic evidentiary dispute, and that's decided by courts all the time.
Syed's legal team asking the court to dismiss the appeal, writing in part, "This appeal is moot because the appellant does not continue to suffer injury, assuming his rights were violated at all, and because there is no remedy this court can provide now that the state has dismissed the charges against Mr. Syed."
We've already modified.
Mosby's office also responding, saying the city state's attorney stands by their investigation. The Lee family looking for the court to decide.
They need to know justice was done. And if it's not been done, then they want to do everything they can to make sure it is done.
So the Court of Appeals will decide whether to grant the hearing. That decision not yet made. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Here's our look at today's top trending stories. Number one, two new Maryland millionaires following last night's Powerball drawing, one of them here in the city. While nobody won the big prize of $1.2 billion, $1 million tickets were sold along Falls Road in Baltimore City and in Prince Frederick, Calvert County. The jackpot is now worth $1.5 billion. The next drawing is Saturday night. Number two, bus shelters are going up all across Baltimore in an effort to keep riders protected from the elements as they wait. MTA is also expanding its dedicated bus lanes in 5 locations. Holly Arnold from the MTA joined Fox 45 Morning News to talk about the improvements.
We currently have 13 miles of dedicated bus lanes throughout the city, and they've been hugely impactful in improving travel speeds and reliability for our riders. And so we're testing out now. It's going to be a 6-month pilot, so it won't actually be painted red yet, but if it goes well, it will be. So it'll be signed and really focusing on getting customer feedback.
Bike racks will also be added to city buses as veterans can ride for free. Number three, Baltimore's health department is shutting down the food depot near Clifton Park in northeast Baltimore. Officials say the closure is due to a rodent infestation and lack of clean water. The health department is asking the business to correct all violations before reinspection, and it's allowed to reopen. Well, the NFL's Commanders are up for sale right as the team is under federal investigation. What federal agents are searching for and why a sale could mean a new stadium.
What an absolutely gorgeous fall evening. Temperatures feeling more like early October than early November. Going to break down what we can expect with that weekend forecast, which I think you're going to like.
The Ravens receiving corps takes a hit as Rashad Bateman is now out for the season. Coach John Harbaugh says Bateman needs foot surgery. Rocco DeSangro will have more on this and other key injuries in Sports Unlimited tonight. Amid a federal investigation into the Washington Commanders, owner Dan Snyder is weighing whether to sell the team, which plays in Maryland. John Gonzalez from our Sinclair sister station in Washington, D.C., reports on the possible sale and the team's latest scandal.
Well, the big question, of course, is will Dan Snyder sell this team? And if he does, the Washington Commanders could carry a price tag of close to $7 billion. That is nearly 9 times what Snyder paid back in '99 for the team and the stadium here 23 years ago. Now ESPN is also reporting that U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Virginia has opened a criminal investigation into allegations that the Washington Commanders engaged in financial improprieties. This news broke just hours after the D.C. area started to absorb the news that Snyder and his wife have hired Bank of America to help facilitate a potential sale. Here's local attorney Scott Bergman, who has represented NFL players. Listen to what he says could be an option.
It would be heartbreaking to see the team in the nation's capital, the DMV, being sold off. But is it a possibility? Absolutely. From a legal hat, it is very possible that Snyder's looking at relocating the team. He may not be trying to even sell the team, maybe just looking to get investment to relocate the team for himself.
Attorneys general in Virginia and D.C. also are reportedly investigating allegations of financial improprieties. By the way, this troubled franchise brings into FedEx Field on Sunday a 3-game winning streak.
Well, there has been a growing push over the past few years to move the Commanders away from FedEx Field and land over Maryland. Sports Illustrated Albert Breer says he thinks it makes sense for the team to remain in the D.C. area. He's looking ahead to what could be a fight for a new stadium between D.C., Maryland, and Virginia if the team is sold.
The new owner would be able to leverage the right deal by having bidders from Maryland and Virginia.
County Executive Angela also Brooks released statements saying they want to keep the team in Maryland.
Well, when I get to fill in, I get to do this thing called this triple cast that Jonathan does. So we don't do this stuff in the morning, but that's kind of cool. You can see not much happening on the HD radar and the conditions looking very nice outside right now. Let's take a look at the next weather maker. And basically what that's going to be is the potential for possibly a few showers early Sunday morning. But this is Saturday afternoon. All of that red right there is warm air that we're going to be talking about as another cold front makes its way in. And early Sunday morning along the frontal boundary could see a couple of scattered showers. Overall, we're really not tracking much in the way of rain. We're just talking about much warmer conditions. Beautiful Thursday evening. We're even warmer for your Friday. And then we've got a big weekend warm up. And this is a gorgeous shot. I know the sun is already down in Towson, but you can still see some of those pops of color. And I'll tell you, we are right near peak here in central Maryland, from Baltimore up into Bel Air, Elkton, out to Westminster, down to Laurel and Annapolis. Those colors are really looking good. Eastern Shore still got a little bit to go. We still have some of the green out there on those deciduous trees. 69 is how high we got today, and that's the second day in a row, my friends, with upper 60s and about 7 degrees above average. We woke up in the mid 40s here this morning, and we're going to be in the 40s and 50s for tomorrow morning. Check out some of these current temperatures, though. I mean, it's November 3rd, and we could be a lot colder, but low to mid 60s across the area. Even Essex and Middle River hanging on to the upper 60s right now, and 68 your temp in Glen Burnie. So as you're heading out for some dinner with friends tonight and just hanging out, maybe watching the World Series, we're talking about 60s, eventually drop into the upper 50s in that 9 o'clock hour, and staying mainly clear. Overall, we're going to drop into the 40s and 50s and might have some patchy fog early tomorrow morning. And you can see those numbers in the upper 40s and lower 50s. And as you wake up with Fox 45 Morning News tomorrow with Tom and Megan and the crew, we're talking about numbers in the lower 50s here for the 6, 7, and 8 o'clock hour. Sun not up until 7:37. Pilots tomorrow, little IFR conditions possibly early with some of that patchy fog, but we are looking at a VFR day again with visual flight rules on the way. And check out some of these numbers, lower 70s for most of the 95 corridor on your Friday afternoon. In just a couple of minutes, I'm going to show you the 10-day forecast. What? That's coming up.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
A gorgeous shot from a drone hovering over the Potomac River. It delivers a great view of the morning fog on a quiet, peaceful morning. Here's another great shot. This is of the Tennessee River from Snooper's Rock. The fall colors make this scene extra special this time of year. Getting to this 180-degree view outside of Chattanooga only requires an easy 30-minute round-trip hike.
For more content like this, like the National Weather Desk on Facebook.
Christmas is still almost 2 months away, but the U.S. Capitol Christmas tree has already been selected, and more goes into preparing the tree than you might think. Rex Hodge from our Sinclair sister station in Asheville, North Carolina, takes us through the process.
The 78-foot red spruce is in a horizontal position right now, but it took a lot of careful planning and coordination to get it into this position.
1, 2, 3,
First, the choice had to be made. The U.S. Capitol architect narrowing options down to the Pisgah National Forest.
He made his pick. Ruby the red spruce, plus the scientific name is Picea rubens.
The U.S. Forest Service's Matt Eldridge says harvesting it takes more than a chainsaw.
That crane's going to lift it. The other crane is going to hook to it too. We'll get it horizontal, gently lowered onto that truck.
So you're a little nervous?
A little bit, which I would hope would be acceptable.
Rodney Smith is the guy with the saw. First, workers hook up the crane's rigging to the top of the tree. Smith and his U.S. Forest Service crew at the base go to work. He makes what's called a B-cut, sawing about halfway on one side.
Come to the other side and cut in about half that distance, pop another wedge in for support.
The plan isn't to drop the tree, but free it so the crane can lift it away. Bluetooth connections keep everyone in communication.
I'll let them know when I'm making the final cut and basically saying, crane operator, she's all yours.
All the planning paid off perfectly.
You are in love with me.
Music to all interested parties.
Where we're at is ancestral Cherokee homeland. We are able to partner with the Forest Service with this mutual mutual respect.
Acknowledgement of Cherokee history. Appreciation of a major sponsor, adding an element to the big tree.
There's a companion truck that's going to follow the tree up on its route and deliver some Christmas trees to some of our military families at Joint Base Andrews.
This year's U.S. Capitol Christmas tree on its way to Washington soon.
She'll be decorated with thousands of ornaments, handmade by North Carolinians all across the state.
From here, the tree is loaded onto the truck. It will travel across North Carolina for 2 weeks and arrive on the west lawn of the U.S. Capitol on November 18th.
That's pretty cool stuff. I mean, I know we're talking about Christmas. We just had Halloween. There's still Thanksgiving to get to 3 weeks from today. Very excited about that as we'll be celebrating. And look at this. I mean, these are numbers that are not Thanksgiving-like at all, or November-like for that matter. Mid to upper 70s over the next couple of days, even into Monday. Now, Election Day a little cooler. Watch. I move out of the way, and you're like, yeah, here comes the cooler numbers that are more November-like by next Thursday and into Veterans Day weekend, which is next weekend when those numbers actually start coming down. You'll definitely feel more November-like by then. But enjoy these numbers, Mary. It's just a very pleasant weekend that's right around the corner.
It looks like spring there. All right, Justin, thanks. Well, finally tonight, 2 new members of the Maryland Zoo family. Check out these cute babies. 2 new Sitatunga calves born just a few weeks ago. Here's some new video of the little ones exploring their habitat, walking very gently, smelling everything around. Oh, and running too. They're having a lot of fun together. The calves are native to Central Africa, known for their specialized hooves, which allow them to easily walk across floating vegetation and wet terrain, or hopping all the way home. Well, catch Game 5 of the World Series tonight on Fox 45. The Astros and the Phillies are both looking to take a 3-2 lead. Coverage begins at 7. First pitch is just after 8 right here on Fox 45. That's all for Fox 45 News at 6. Family Feud's up next. We'll see you back after the World Series. Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune will air after our late newscast. Have a good night.